You can't hear me. I've been sitting here on mute for 3 whole minutes. What? You guys got to type that out and tell me, Cheryl, you're on mute. Technical gremlins abound, my friends. You're sitting there watching me talk. If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up, give me a like, a whatever. At least you didn't get to hear me coughing, so that was good. Today, my friends, don't forget to go to our website and pick up our book. Smack it to me. Now we can hear the yonder sales pitch. It says pre-order still on the listing. Please, by all means, go and order it. It was not you, Rebecca. It was me. I'm sure people are out there restarting their computers and their phones and going back and coming back. It is not you. I apologize. These tech issues have plagued us since last week. Our lighting system is on the fritz, and so we have been trying to get the lighting system back up and running. And at noon today, when I went to go record, there was just no way it was going to work for me today. So here we are. We are going to talk about rugs, fabric rugs. And let me tell you, one of the most popular patterns on the market right now is a fabric rug pattern called the Jelly Roll Rug. And if you haven't seen it, you can Google it. There's a million great tutorials about it, but there's also an official pattern. And I would recommend to you that you pick up that official pattern for the Jelly Roll Rug if that is the rug that you would like to make. But I was in a vintage shop and initially on my way through this vintage store, it looked to me as if they had absolutely nothing sewing related. And then in a box, around a corner, I was able to spy this little guy. And this fabric rug, this braided rug, caught my eye. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So there are many ways to make a fabric rug, and some of them require a sewing machine or some kind of sewing implement like a sewing machine. Many of them do not, and we're going to talk about that. So let me just pop up our screen here. Now, this is the very first rug that I want to talk about. And this is not really a rug at all. It's like a little placemat table runner thing. It's very small. You can see it in relation to my hands. I don't even think it's like 8 inches maybe from here to here. This rug or mat or whatever you want to call it is crocheted. So this, my friends, if you can crochet, this is a rug that's very easy to start, create, add to, etc. So this particular one is made of very different kinds of fabric. There's some silky fabrics in here. There's poly. There looks to be some kind of knit. And then this one here at the end is also kind of a knit. So this was, I believe, made out of old dresses and shirtings and scraps that were left over from probably making clothing. So this particular one, and it looks somewhat the same on both sides. This one is very easy to do if you know how to do crochet. So this is all single crochet, and there is a chain in the middle. So you would chain stitch here, And then you would just start your crochet stitches. And when you got to the end, instead of turning around and going back the other way, you keep going and continue the stitches onto the back side of that initial chain stitch, and then just keep going around and around. And you can see that that's how this was done. As you can see the transition like here. Okay, so you've got a transition, and it just, as you can see, goes around the edge and then around the edge again, and then changes to a new fabric and does the same thing over and over. So from a rug perspective, this could have been the beginning of a new rug, or it was meant to be a little placemat, table runner, small thing, which you could absolutely still do. And this is how I do use this particular rug thing in my house. It's just a little placemat. We put a potted plant here. It's very lovely. I can't wait to go put it back. So this is from my my in-laws family. So this is one of those things where, if you've watched the show, you hear me talk about my my in-laws who were master crafting ladies. Like, they could do everything. They could hook a rug, cane a chair, can a vegetable. That's what I usually say about my in-laws. And these this, I believe, was started to be a rug and was never finished. And it looks like, it just ends here, right here. They were able to just tie it off and leave it at that. But you could continue to pick it up and keep going around and around and make this bigger and bigger until it was rug sized. And they're easy to care for because they just get washed and so on. So if you can crochet, this would be one of the options for you to create a rug. So this is the first of the methods that I wanted to show you, because this particular rug, as a crocheter, I can understand how this is made. It's just a single crochet stitch that you would, so in this here, we would pick up, in between these sections here, and you would just keep going and going and going until you went all the way around. So this, if you can crochet, is the first method. Now, what I don't know is how thick this fabric should be. And let's just do a little experiment. We're going to pull the fabric out, and it looks like the fabric is 1 inch. So for those of you that don't have your handy dandy 1 inch markers, I know that on my finger, this to this here is 1 inch. So for me, I would just need to put that down, and look, that is 1 inch. So this is a pretty easy method to do. You would just need to cut your strips into 1 inch strips and move on with your project. So that is the first, and I'm just using my scissor to put that tail back where it belongs. I don't like they did a nice job at hiding the tail, so we don't need to have that sticking out. Okay, so that is the first rug method, and that would be to chain stitch, with your crochet a certain number, and then just use that as your base and continue to crochet around and around. You would need a pretty thick crochet hook, which again are super readily available. And yeah, so this is a pretty straightforward process for this rug. So we're going to take this one away. And we're going to talk about this next one, because this next one's been on the market for quite some time. And this one here is Aunt Phillies Toothbrush Rugs. Now, you probably haven't seen one of these in your local quilt shops for quite some time, but I can tell you, I double checked that her website is still active to this day, and you can purchase the Aunt Philly toothbrush rug and tool. And we're going to talk about this. Now, this was originally $9. I think they are currently $12, but I was able to pick this up in a yard sale for 50 cents. And, you know, again, I am just fascinated with the rugs, with this scrappy rug process. I think that this is really awesome. Now, again, I am not going to show you all the directions because this copyright does belong to Aunt Philly. So I'm not, you know, going to give you all the directions here. But one of the things that she talked about was that the toothbrush itself was what she initially created this with. It was with an old toothbrush where you had cut off the bristles. However, if you've noticed, toothbrushes no longer come with the little hole in the end. And a currently modern toothbrush is really not usable really in, you know, for this method anymore. So she started making her own. Sorry about that. Someone is calling me. Don't they know I'm recording? So she actually, once they started removing the hole from toothbrushes, she realized that she needed to start creating her own tool, and has been selling these ever since. And so this is from, if you look here, 1986 is when she started making these toothbrush rugs. Now, if you have a toothbrush at home with a hole in it, this is essentially what you're making is this same tool. Okay, so what she's going to talk about is how to make the whole process. And when I read these directions, okay, I really quickly was able to figure out how this is done. And I can tell you that just looking at one of the items in her shop, and let's hide that one. There we go. Okay, so this is a picture of a rug from her shop, but it gives you a really good idea of what's happening here with this particular rug and why you would need her little tool. And this is because what you have is essentially a knotting process. So what you're doing is you're taking a strip, and if in this photo, what I want you to recognize is that there's all of this little white peeking out from underneath all of the colors. And that, my friends, is what they call, like, in her instructions, she's calling that a runner. And what you're doing is essentially knotting a working thread, your other thread attached to your tool, and you're looping it and creating knots, and you go around and around, and you constantly loop the runner thread. In this example, that runner thread or the runner fabric is white, and the colorful thread or colorful fabric here is the one that would be attached to the tool and constantly looped and threaded. So it's a sewing method where you are creating knots and just sliding them down and tightening them up and continuing all the way around while you are using your runner, that white thread, and your working fabric thread in the color. So that gives you a really good sense of what is happening with this process. Now, she's been selling these tools for a really long time, and they're pretty tried and true. And excuse me. So essentially, this is, you know, a little like looping, running, sewing process, but you're doing it with this tool. So this little doohickey, I guess you would call it, is essentially, you know, a giant threaded needle of, you know, for you to sew your rug around and around in. And so I'm just going to show you the very last instruction, which again is probably not going to make a whole lot of sense, because I really do encourage you to support her and her pattern, which again, you can still get. Her website is Aunt Phillies. So it's AuntPhillies.com. And that, again, you can still get from her. She says you need a yardstick. I personally don't need a yardstick to do this. And you can basically just do this with the scraps that you own, and you just attach them to each other over and over again. But this is to show you, you have your fabric that essentially you're sewing over that thread over and over again, and just enveloping that with your working thread. So that's just a really quick illustration from her instructions to show you essentially what you're doing. And you can buy the tool and the instructions from her website, and you can still make these rugs, you know, using your fabric scraps. So this is a really cool little project. It's been a long time that this idea has been around, and in the information that I read on her website, she says that her mother taught her how to do this, and I love that. I love that it was passed down. That at home they would make these, you know, with an actual toothbrush, which is why these are called toothbrush rugs. This tool, which now she manufactures, but her original ones were made out of the excess of an old toothbrush. So you would just cut off the head of the bristle part and then sharpen this down, file it down so that it was pointy, and then you loop the fabric through the hole, and you know, do the sewing, the looping process that makes this. So it's another fairly simple project, great scrap buster, and I love that it's still in business. You could go support her today. Now, it does also call for here a large safety pin, and this is what was in this kit, so to speak, when I purchased it from the yard sale. So you know me, I'm always a big sucker for finding you know, these things at yard sales and things like that. So this was really great. Great little project, great little rug. Aunt Phillies toothbrush rugs. And again, they're called toothbrush because that tool used to be made out of a toothbrush. Now, you do not need to use an old nasty toothbrush. You can buy the tool directly from her. So then, my friends, this is the newest one that I found. And trust me when I tell you, it wasn't in this plastic when I found it. It was sort of just this bag, right, with all this stuff in it, and there was torn. And I said, oh my gosh, I know exactly what this is. Now, there was no other sewing item in the shop. This was the only sewing thing that they had. And you can see this has been around the block a few times. So what was this? So right away, I recognize, hey, those look like bias strip makers. And in fact, that is what they are. They came with, all of this was in this package. And I do not know if all of these were included originally. I think only three of them would have been included in the package. And it looks like there's two different sizes here. So I'm just going to go through here and see, because there really isn't even an even number. Yeah, they're definitely odd. So this is how many we have. I think that only 3 came in the package. So let's read these directions, shall we? All right. So your material needs to be 1.5 inches, and you put that into under the guard bar into each of your 3 cloth folders. Well, we know now that this is like a bias strip maker, bias tape maker. Start braiding like braiding hair. Well, what if you don't know how to braid hair? That would be a terrible instruction. That's very assuming. Leave folders on each strip while sewing on new strips of material. So what this says to me is that if you put a piece of fabric in here, that if you get to the end of your piece of fabric, you would actually then sew on a new piece of fabric in order for it to continue. And that's, again, that's how you would get the different pieces of fabric. So new lengths on a bias with as flat a seam as possible. Make a braid 26 inches long, measure off 24 inches, and then it says here, bend the 24 inches in half, lacing 2 braids together at the bend. This forms the center of your rug. Lace your rug like you lace your shoes, going back and forth under each loop. Lace on wrong side. All right, so there are other instructions here, and it is hard to say that it looks like this may be 2 kits put together, in fact. So I believe that 3 of these came with 1 kit, and these others may belong to a different kit. I am not sure. So we're going to read these directions as well. Because if you look at this one, it's called Rug-A-Day Rug Braiding Kit, and this is from Henry Seligman Company, Seligman. So this may be actually different instructions, and oh my, this is falling apart. So we'll just be very gentle with these instructions. See how these should, well, you know what? They're in 4 pieces, so all right, let's see how this goes. Okay, so this is from the same company. It does look like it may be a little bit later. Boy, these are really... All right, so here's our directions. To make firm, reversible braided rugs, use Newflex material folders. Okay. Prepare strips for braiding by simply pulling the material through the folders. It's as simple as that. No more hand turning. So yeah, of course, just like you would with doing bias tape, right? When you would fold bias, you would do that by hand. The folders do it all, shaping strips perfectly for speedy braiding that results in reversible rugs. Saves all the labor of hand turning. All right, so any wool or material of medium weight or felt of a thickness that can be inserted into the guide bars can be used. Felt? Who would put felt in this? Strips should be 1.5 inches. Start with strips of material of desired length and proceed as outlined below. Okay. Insert a strip under the guide bar in each of your folders. Push material through to the small end and pull through. So that's what you're doing. We know that. That's a bias strip maker. The inner construction of the folder does the perfect job, turning and folding, blah, blah, blah. Now slowly draw, keep folder on each strip when adding new lengths of material. A firm, steady pull will draw the sewn seam through each new flex folder. Well, this is, they're calling these new flex folders. They're bias tape makers, my friends. Okay. New flex construction prepares strips for braiding. Far better than laborious, slow hand methods. That's really funny. Okay. Now on to the real directions. Because this is where I am lost. All right. So this is made by Mr. Seligman, Mr. Henry Seligman. All right, so let's figure out these directions. All right. Okay. Braid a rug in a day. The new flex way. All right. Every braided rug has a centerpiece. The length of the first braid or centerpiece is determined by the size of the rug you intend to make. The difference in feet between the width and the length of the rug. So, for example, a 2-foot by 3-foot rug has a 1-foot centerpiece. And so on. Okay, so it gives you some math here. You can do some math if you like. I am not going to do the math. All right. So then it says tear strips into 1.5-inch lengths. That's here. Oh, of course, we're missing a little piece. Okay. Tear strips, put the folder on, set a weight such as a flat iron over 3 strands to hold them firmly, thus preventing them from slipping while braiding. Braid as you would braid your hair. Yeah, these are not real, like these, I would not say these are bias makers in any way, but you could use them for that, but I don't think I would. Okay. When you have a braided strip, it is easy to sew additional strips onto the ends of the strands. The ends of the strips are cut on the bias and then sewn together. So we know sort of how to do that. Once you have a piece of fabric in here, and you have like you get to the end, you would just sew a new piece on. Now you could do that by hand, or you could do that by machine, depending, or you could just, I think the reason that they're doing that is they don't want you to have a lot of fabric hanging off the edge of this, because as you braid, you know that if you even have long hair, when you start to do a braid, you have to keep the strands very separate from one another in order for that to stay apart. So to get a neat center, cut off loose ends at the start to be the beginning of the braid, holding braid firmly while you overcast with a regular needle and thread where you have made the cut. So, okay, so you do have to do a little hand stitching there at the beginning. Make a braid 26 inches long. Did I drop the other piece of paper? I did. Measure off 24 inches of the braid, measuring from where you have made the overcast stitches. Bend them in half, sewing the 2 braids together at the bend. This forms the center of your rug. You now have a 12-inch center braid and 14 inches of braid left that must be sewed to the center braid and to where you have overcast at the beginning of the braid. This is really confusing. So my guess is is that my impression is you're taking 26 inches, you fold it in half, or 24 inches, fold it in half, you have 12. And now they're saying you sew those two pieces together. Ah. Okay. Use a regular darning needle and a single strand of heavy linen carpet thread. Sew braids together where you made the bend. Then remove the darning needle and replace it with a lacer. And that is what you are lacing in between the loops. Okay. All right. So essentially, okay, if you have made, and I'm going to jump down here and get the piece of paper that's on the floor. I misunderstood. I thought they were to press the strips. They are not to press the strips. They are to curl the strips into like a braidable shape, from my understanding. All right, so essentially what you're doing is, and it is a bit shown on these directions. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So what you're doing is you're braiding the fabric, and then you are essentially stitching them to the previous row. Excuse me. Like I was saying earlier, when my camera was not working, or my sound wasn't working, my allergies are through the roof. The neighbor has just mowed, and we have all the windows open, so it's been like a very strange coughing day. So this very first row here, you are taking this piece that you've braided. Okay, you've got a long braid, and you are folding that in half and then stitching those two together. Essentially, if you've ever made a jelly roll rug, that is exactly the same concept, except the jelly roll rug is made from jelly roll strips and not 3 braided strips of fabric. So if you look here, right, you don't see, unlike this toothbrush rug, okay, your toothbrush rug, you're constantly looping into your previous row. You are not doing that with these. You could do this with 3 bias tape makers that are the same size, and you would just take them, strip your fabric into these, braid, okay, and then create a giant ball of jelly roll yarn that you would essentially use just like you would with a jelly roll rug. So if you've thought about making a jelly roll rug, but you're like, you know what, I don't want to waste my beautiful jelly roll on it, but I've got yards and millions of scraps, this would be a great way to make the yarn for your jelly roll rug. Is that you would take these 3 and braid them, and then make as much yardage as you want, and then, because you're essentially just sewing them together, what they're saying is to take a piece of this, what do they call it? It's this, these instructions are like in pieces. Heavy carpet linen carpet thread. Now you can still get carpet thread. That is still available. So you can get that, but you're essentially just making stitches and doing that. Hi, Debbie, how are you? It's okay. You're late. I'm late. It's late. We're late. Technical difficulties abound. Okay, so it does give, there's some more instructions here. So let's see what else it says. You are now ready to start the 3rd row. When you have used up one length of thread, tie on another length. So that's exactly what you're doing with the jelly roll rug as well. You sew all your strips together. This is just saying, as you are pulling your fabric and it's making your skinny amount here, right, so that it can be braided, what you're doing is just, as you have your fabric sticking out here, you just sew on more fabric and just keep going. Lace together the remainder of the braided rug just as you would lace your shoes, under and over, drawing the thread forward firmly, lacing through each loop. Skipping a loop at each corner makes allowance for extra braid on the outside row, assuring that your rug will lay flat. So what that means is, because again, old sewing directions require a bit of like sleuthing, okay? Because what they intended, and they assume that you know, one, how to braid hair, two, how to tie your shoes. In finishing off your rug, taper the ends of strips to a point. Braid to the end of the strips, then sew the braid neatly to the end of the rug. Okay, so this does look like there were 3 different sets, and it looks like I'm missing one piece. So, again, they came with different widths. It says, when using lightweight materials, use 3 small folders, medium weight materials with the mediums, and large with wool, etc. with the large. The new Flex braiding set is the only set that works satisfactorily on all weights of material. Thanks, Mr. Henry Seligman. All right, so these little... Now, I don't think that was a whole lot more explanatory than this. But we get a sense now of what we're supposed to do. Okay, so you're supposed to insert fabric into here. The curls in there, take the raw edges and flip them up, just like they do for a bias tape maker. And then as you slide your fabric down down, you slide it, it creates these little skinnier strips, which you can then braid. And you are essentially sewing through the rug, like through the braid loops, and you're attaching the edge of the rug, as we can see in this here. Okay, you're attaching that edge to your existing parts, and you just keep going around and around until you have a rug that is the size that you want it. Now, that is essentially what, you are. So this is a 3 fabric at a time system, and braided rugs are very common. You can buy them still. People do sell them. And, or you can get a kit like this and make them, or you can use 3 bias tape makers and make them. Okay. Or if you want to use less strips of fabric, okay, that's where you would want to come in with the toothbrush rug. All right. So if you want to, let's get that back in focus. There we go. Okay. So if you want to use a strip of fabric that you're going to cover, and the other fabric be all of the main focus, this is a 2-strip method. So right now we've got the rug braiding, takes 3 strips of fabric. The Aunt Phillies toothbrush rug, which takes 2 strips of fabric, or the crochet version, which only uses 1 strip of fabric. So we have essentially 3 different ways to make a fabric rug that don't require any batting. If you want to do the jelly roll rug version, you'll need batting and your sewing machine. These are more hands-on, more hand sewing methods with these. Like this is going to be the method for, again, I've got one strip. I'm just going to go with one strip. All you have to worry about is attaching fabric to the end of whatever you were on last, and just keep going and going. And as we found out earlier when we unpicked the tail here, we know that fabric is 1 inch in width. So because you're going through itself, you're getting a nice feel to the rug. And should anything happen here, you're basically, like if it's worn out or something, I don't see this coming apart necessarily. This one, again, you have a fabric that essentially you are covering in a knotting process using this little tool. And that is where, you have a strip of fabric and you have another strip of fabric and you're constantly making knots. And as you make that longer or go around in a circle, you're dipping into the row below and covering and that's how you're attaching one row to the other. This method is essentially using these to make a strip, very much like the jelly roll rug. You make a strip and then you sew that strip. I would say if you wanted to do a modern version of this, you could essentially use 3 bias tape makers, make your braid, make a giant roll of the braid, and then as you get to the end, as you have your ball of braided yarn, lay it out and sew it and stitch it down with your sewing machine. So that would be the modern version of that. There's also, excuse me, rag rug making, which uses a loom. And I do have a loom with half a rag rug on it. This is probably my oldest. No, I take that back. That's not my oldest UFO. My oldest UFO in my collection is 22 years old. So now I would say that the rug is a close second. I bust it out every winter and start sewing on it, and then I immediately get tired of it and put it back away. So it has been half finished for years. This has been in the family for a long time. These are somebody's dress or shirt or something, and this was just crocheted. So yeah, my oldest UFO is 22 years old. I who am nearly 50, that is a pretty long time. So yeah, it's been a while. And so this one, again, is just like a little dresser scarf thing. I keep it on my actually we keep it on our side, our buffet. Is that what you call it? A buffet? We just keep this on our buffet. We have a plant that goes here. And so this is what has been in the family a long time. So this one, again, rag rug crochet. This one is absolutely 100% crochet. It's a single crochet. For those of you who do crochet, you would just chain stitch however long you want that start to be. And I think they did do a 12-inch or so start. Yeah, they almost did a 12-inch start exactly. So you would chain stitch a foot of chain and then just use that and just go around and around it, and it will create this oval shape. I do not know if in my family this was started and never finished, or if it was always meant to be this size. That part I don't know. But you could do something similar with the braid using these bias type tape makers. These are not bias tape makers. What does he call these? He calls them something. New Flex material folders. That is not really what these are. So anyway, my friends, you have now learned 3 different methods of fabric folding and fabric rug making techniques. I would love to see if you do any of them. If you have a different method other than well, I guess there's 4 if you include the jelly roll rug makers. If you have a different method on how to make rugs out of fabric, let me know in the comments. And I hope that this inspires you to bust out all of those scraps and start making jelly roll or other types of rugs. My friends, we will be back not next week. Next week is the day after Memorial Day, and we are taking that day off. We're actually taking Memorial Day and the day after off. So I will not be here next week, but we will be here the week after, which will be the first week of June. And that means we will have a new quilt on the wall, and we will have lots of updates to give you about what is going on around here. So my friends, I hope you all have a fantastic week. Happy Memorial Day to you too, Debbie. Thank you so much. And I will see all of you in 2 weeks. Take care.